Masechet Sotah Daf Lamed Dalid. We began this perek with languages, and Sotah can be said in any language. We brought other things that can be said in any language, and then we brought some items that have to be said in Hebrew, including the Barachot and Kelalot that are recited on Had Gerizim and Had Aival. And then we were talking about where are they located, where exactly on the other side of the Jordan. Since we talked about crossing the Jordan, we're now going to go into a tangent about the splitting of the Jordan River. Tenorabanan, Kesad Avdu Yisrael et Hayarden. What was the process of Bnei Yisrael crossing over the Jordan? Bechol Yom Aron Nosea Achar Shene Degalim Vayom Nasa Tehila. Usually, when they were going in the desert, the Aron would go and behind two of the Shevatim, Yehuda and Reuven would go in front, and then the Aron would go after them. However, on this day, the Aron had to go in front. Shene'emar, Hine Aron Habrit, Adon Kol Haaretz Ober Lifnechem. As the Pasuk says in Yoshua, that the Aron is going to go in front. That's because the Aron first went into the water, and as soon as the Kohanim put their feet in the water, that's when the river became dry. B'chol yom bayom Leviim nosim et ha'aron v'hayom nesa'uhu Kohanim shene'emar v'haya kenoch kapot reglei Kohanim nosei Aron Hashem. Usually, the Leviim, they were tasked with carrying the Aron, but on this day that they were crossing over the Jordan, the Kohanim were carrying it, as the Pasuk in Yoshua says, when they put their feet in the water, that's when it became dry. Tanya, Rabbi Yosef Omer, Bishlosha Mekomot Nasu Kohanim et Ha'aron. Now they were mentioned one time where Rabbi Yosef says that there's actually 3 times historically when the Kohanim were the ones carrying the Aron. Usually it's the Leviim. Keshavru et Hayarden, one is when they crossed the Jordan River, as we just said. Uchshesebu et Yericho, when they encircled Yericho and marched around it, the Kohanim carried the Aron. Uchshehecheziruhu limkomo, and when King Shlomo built the Bet HaMikdash and put the Aron into the Kodesh Kodashim, it was the Kohanim who were carrying it. וכיוון שנטבלו רגלי כהנים במים, חזרו המים לאחוריהם, שנאמר, וכבו נושא הארון עד הירדן, ועמדו המים היורדים מלמעלה, קמו נד אחד. And so when the Kohanim put their feet in the water, the Jordan River turned backwards. The water that was coming from above became like a big wall. This is different from one of the descriptions of Kiryat Yamsuf, where the water was miminam umisemolam, right, was like a wall on the right and left. That's different from the Jordan River, where it was all stopped on one side, the rest of the water on the other side just kept flowing. So that's how you got the dry land. וכמה גובהן של מים, 12 מיל על 12 מיל, כנגד מחנה ישראל, דברי רבי יהודה. And so, where the water go when it stopped, so then it would start piling up, and start just going up higher and higher. We kind of imagine the water, instead of flowing down, it would just make a 90-degree angle up and flow up towards the sky. And so how high did it go up? So this here says 12 mil by 12 mil, which is the footprint of the encampment of Israel. So according to the Yehuda, the encampment followed the way that they encamped, right, which is the Aron in the middle and the 3 Shevatim on each side, and that would be a width and length of 12 by 12 mil, so that they could pass through in that way. Actually, this is curious because really you just need 12 mil in terms of the width of the passing over of the across the Jordan. But the riverbed is just as wide as the riverbed is. It's not 12 mil, so it doesn't really make sense to say 12 by 12. And in fact, if you look at the manuscripts here, you'll see that while the printed editions and a Genizer fragment does say 12 by 12, but 2 manuscripts just say that how wide was the water? 12 mil. So in other words, the space that left them to walk through was 12 mil, so that they could all walk through. But the riverbed itself was small. However, whatever the width of the river was, is the same, is much smaller. A mil is a Roman mile, which is less than a modern mile. Okay, so the point is here that it would go up 12 meal. So while it's going up, that's when the 12 meal of the length of the encampment would be able to pass through as it's going up, assuming that it's the same speed. However, Amar lo Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon Barech Adam Kal o Mayim Kalim Heve Omer Mayim Kalim Im Ken Ba'in Mayim V'Shotfin Otam. But Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Shimon disagrees with Rabbi Yehuda and says, right, according to you, which one goes faster, a person walking or water? And especially, it's not just people walking; it's whole encampment with children and baby carriages, and so it will take them a while, and the water is going to flow faster. So the water is going up, and by the time it reaches 12 mil up high, then it's going to start crashing down. But the people are going slower than the water is traveling, and therefore it will come and drown them. So therefore, that doesn't make sense. That it should be that it's only it only went up to the sky 12 mil. אלא מלמד שיהיו מים נדגשים ועולים כפין על גבי כפין יותר מ300 מיל עד שראו אותן כל מלכי מזרח ומערב. Rather, a second opinion is that it kept going up and piling up upon each other, arches upon arches, more than 300 mil. And it was so big, so this was not only to give enough time for everybody to walk through. We're going to see later on that in this opinion, they might have walked through single file. But not only for that reason, to give them more time, but also to make this giant monument, pillar of water, so that all of the kings everywhere from east to west would be able to see it. שנאמר ויהי כשמוע כל מלכי המורי אשר בעבר הירדן ימה וכל מלכי הכנעני אשר על הים את אשר הוביש השם את מי הירדן מפני בני ישראל עד עוברם וימאס בם ולא היה בם עוד רוח מפני בני ישראל. Pasuk in Yeshua says that all the kings of the Amori from the Jordan westward and the kings that were by the sea heard that Hashem dried up the waters of the river until they passed over, and the hearts of the kings melted, and they had no spirit because they were fearful of Bnei Israel. So Pasuk says that they heard about it, but just hearing a news report about it is not as effective as actually seeing it, right? Can you imagine if they're far away and they're seeing this thing? That would make them very scared and not want to put up a fight to Bnei Israel. And now just we bring a parallel that Rachav, the Hazonah, she told the messengers from Yeshua that she heard about the time, this is earlier, 40 years before, when Hashem made the Yam Suf dry. So this is back when of Kiryat Yam Suf. So it's not directly related to Yeshua. This Rachav heard about this before before the Jordan River was split. But the point is that it's associated. The splitting of the Yam Suf in the first generation is parallel to the splitting of the Jordan in the second generation. Second generation had to re-experience a miracle like this. It's not just a miracle of getting to the other side, it's also a berit ceremony of passing through two halves. But the point is that Rachav was so impressed, and even 40 years later remembered how the sea was split and how everybody was terrified because of that. And so that's why for the second generation also had the same effect on the kings who saw this big pile. Odam בירדן, אמר להם יהושע, דעו על מה אתם עוברים את הירדן, על מנת שתורישו את יושבי הארץ מפניכם, שנאמר, והורשתם את כל יושבי הארץ מפניכם. אם אתם עושים כן מוטב, ואם לאו, באים מים ושוטפים Otichem, my otichem, oti ve'etchem. While they were in the Jordan, Yeshua said, let's pause for a moment, like a tour guide, right? Everybody stop here. I have to tell you an important message. Listen, I want you to know why you are crossing over the Jordan. It's in order that you should inherit this land and kick out the enemies. As the Pasuk says, drive out the inhabitants of the land before you. If you do so, then that's good. Right? Then you deserve to have the land. But if not, then this water here that's standing in a pile, ready to fall upon you, should come upon you and drown you. In other words, you're entering on condition. You have a mission here to build a nation, and so you have to have courage and do it. Otherwise, right, this is kind of being in the middle, right in the middle there, in a very precarious position. that's when he's saying, yeah, this is all unconditioned. And so if you don't, it will come and drown otichem, an unusual word that's said in this statement. It's not actually quoting a pasuk. It's just a new word. So what is this? What is this neologism? What is otichem? Oti ve'etchem. It's going to drown. The water will drown me and you. Yoshua is the leader. He's encouraging them. He says, if you don't do your job and fight, then you and me, we all will get drowned together. And so that's why he stops in the middle of the Jordan. So we have to account for this time also, that you have everybody there in the middle. And Yoshua giving this speech. Odam bayarden, amar lehem Yoshua, harimu lachem ish eben echat al shichmo lemispar shibtei Yisrael. And furthermore, while they're in there, Yoshua says, we need every person, according to the tribes of Israel, 12 people, to pick up some of the stones from the middle, and they're going to carry them out and put them in where they're going to in the dwelling place in the Malon, to be an everlasting memory that, hey, where is the stone from? It's from the bottom of the river. How'd they get it from the bottom of the river? Oh, when the river was dried up. As the pasuk itself says, this will be a sign when the children ask, what are these stones? And you'll say that these are the stones that came from the bottom of the riverbed. And that will be an everlasting sign of this miracle that their ancestors crossed the river. Odam bayarden, amar lehem Yoshua, asu lachem mizeh mitoch hayarden mimasav raglei hakohanim, hachin shetem asra banim v'habartem otam imachem v'nachtem otam b'malon asher talinu bo halayla. Right, further elaboration that while they're still in the Jordan, Yoshua said, take from here, from exactly where the Kohanim are standing, 12 stones, and carry them with you, and put them in the malon, in the lodging place where you will be tonight. Yachol bechol malon ma'u malon. Now you might think they have to carry it every time they go from place to place. Every time they go to a new campsite, to a new lodging place, they still have to carry these heavy stones everywhere. No, only tonight. They're going to bring it to the first stop where they're first going to sleep, and then they leave it there. Right? That's it'll stay there forever. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Abba chalafta, Rabbi Eliezer ben Matya v'Chananya ben Chachinai amdu alotan avanim v'shi'arum. Following these sages, they went and they stood on those very stones. They went to visit them, and they measured them. Kol achat v'achat shekula k'arba'im se'ah ugmiri dete'ona demid le'inish lechatve tilta dete'one have. And their measurement was each one weighed 40 se'ah. This is unusual because 40 se'ah is a volume measure. So what does it mean to weigh 40 se'ah? Maybe it means they weighed the amount of 40 se'ah of water, a bathtub full of water. How much would that weigh? Each of the stones weighed that much. Now, that's interesting because there is another tradition that a person can lift onto his shoulders a third of what he can carry if someone loads him up, right? It's hard to pick something up, right? So if, let's say, you could pick up 100 pounds, right, and lift it up, but if other people help and put it on your shoulder, you'd be able to carry 300 pounds. So why is that interesting? From this we can extrapolate the size of the cluster of grapes that the spies carried, because it says there that they carried it on a pole between two. Now, if you're carrying something on a pole, right, that means automatically you're going to have one person on one side of the pole and one carrying from the other side of the pole. It wouldn't make any sense to have only one person on a pole. So why does it have to say bishnayim? You could just say vaisu bamot, and I would know that there's two people carrying it. So what does two come to include? That there's two. That there are two poles, right? Bamot bishnayim, two poles. So that means that there were four people all together carrying it. Now, when you carry something on a pole, you don't have to account for lifting it up on top of your shoulder. It's easy to carry. So this would be the amount that a person can carry, not the amount of a person not the amount that a person can pick up. And so, therefore, if a person can pick up 40 se'ah, right? So, because over here they had to actually lift it, these stones, these rabbis said they weighed the stones that were found in the Malon, and they were 40 se'ah each. So that means a person can pick up 40 se'ah. Now we said a person can carry 3 times that. So that means any one individual can carry 120 se'ah. If you have 4 people carrying it, that's 4 times 120, that's 480 se'ah. So the final conclusion is that one cluster of grapes was as heavy as 480 se'ah. That is a lot of very, very big grapes. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, טור תנה, בטור תנה דטור תנה. הכיצד 8 נשאו אשכול, 1 נשא רימון ו1 נשא תאנה. יהושע וכלב לא נשאו כלום. היא בהתאמה משום דחשיבה, והיא בהתאמה שלא היו באותה עשה. If that cluster of grapes wasn't big enough, Rabbi Yitzchak says actually it was even bigger. It was a scale upon scales upon scales. How so? In other words, it was actually not 4 people, but 8 people that carried that one cluster of grapes. And they had, see, these 2 rods here and 2 rods here, and across those rods they put another one. That's one way of making it, or a couple of other configurations. But the point of all of them is that they required 8 people to carry it, so that this cluster of grapes was actually double what the previous opinion said. So this is 8. That would account for 8 of the spies. What about the other spies? Well, one of them carried the pomegranate, and one carried a cluster of one carried a fig. That's how big a fig was. One person carried a whole one, but the grapes, a cluster of grapes, was much bigger than the rest of them. So that accounts for 10 of the spies. And then Yoshua and Kalev, they did not carry anything. Why didn't they carry anything? Either because they were very prominent, and so it was not respectful for them to have to carry anything, or because they did not want to associate themselves with the evil 10 spies. You can explain that the 10 spies, why they're bringing these beautiful big grapes. Is it to impress the people? Look how wonderful the fruit is. Well, if that was the case, then they would be encouraging, so let's go. We can go and conquer it. It seems that their intention was actually the opposite. To bring these giant grapes to prove, imagine how big the people are in there. There are giants in there, and these giants are very mighty, and we have no chance. We were not going to be able to conquer them. And so really they had negative intention in carrying all of these big fruit. And Yeshua and Kalev wanted no part of that. They didn't want to bring and show off this big fruit. Their point was, it's a good land. Don't worry about it. Hashem is with us. We can conquer it. Have faith. Have courage. And that's why they did not carry any of the fruit. פליגי בא רבי עמי ורבי יצחק נפחה אחד אמר לדברי רבי יהודה כחייתן עברו לדברי רבי אלעזר ורבי שמעון בזה אחר זה עברו. So going back to how much did the sea split, did the river pile up? Was it 12 meal or was it a lot more? So there's two interpretations of it. One of the interpretations is that according to the Yehuda, they passed according to the regular formation with 3 shevatim in each all around the Adon, and that's 12 by 12, and so that's why the river had to pile up 12 meal to allow space for them to go in between. And that's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. Whereas according to Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon, he's the one that said it piled up more than 300 meal, and that's because they were crossing single file. So that would take much longer, and that's why it had to pile up much more. However, the other interpretation of these 2 Tanaim is V'chadamar ben mor kechayatan avru mor sabar adam kal or mor sabar mayim kalim. In this interpretation, they both agree that they didn't go single file. They traveled according to the normal formation of the camp. However, one opinion says that people are faster than water. That's the Yehuda. And so it's enough that while it's piling up for 12 meal, they are going faster than the water is. And so they have time to stop in the middle. Yeshua would give them a talk. They would collect the stones and they would continue walking. And they could, from the first person to the last person, they can all get through while the water is still traveling. Whereas the other opinion, Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon, says that water travels faster. And and therefore it was required for the water to go higher and higher in order to give time for all of Bnei Israel to pass through. Now that we mentioned Yoshua and going into the land, and so we're going to go on a tangent of back to the spies that Moshe sent. When he went into the land, Yoshua also sent spies. So we're going to elaborate on those pesukim. Shelach lecha anashim, amar Resh Lakish, shelach lecha midatcha, v'chi adam ze borel chelek ra le'atzmo, v'hainu dichti v'yita be'anai hadavar, amar Resh Lakish be'anai, v'lo be'anav shel makom. Okay, this is famous Rashi also on shelach lecha anashim. Why this extra word lecha? In Peshat, it's just part of the verb, right? You send. But in the Midrash, it's an extra word. Resh Lakish said, shelach, Hashem said, send according to your own discretion. If you want to send because you want to, so fine. Because otherwise, would a person choose something that was bad for himself? Meaning, would Hashem tell them to do something that's going to turn out negative? Would Hashem command them to send spies when that's going to backfire? Hashem will not do that. He knows that this is not a good idea. Rather, it's the people that wanted it, and then Hashem answered, Moshe answered in the name of God, fine, if you want to send, you could send. And that's why it says, and the parallel, that was in Shelach Lecha is in Bemidbar, in Parashat Shelach Lecha, whereas in Devarim, it says, Vayita be'anai hadavar. Moshe said, you guys asked for spies, and I said, fine, you can do it. And so Resh Lakish infers, you see, it says be'anai. In the eyes of Moshe said, okay, fine, it's okay with me. But only in Moshe's eyes, Hashem was not pleased with it. He did not want them to send spies. So by putting these two, first of all, that we can reconcile the two Pesukim. That's not that Hashem said, I want you to send spies. It's the people that wanted spies. Moshe okayed it, but Hashem never wanted it, because he knew that this would turn out badly. The purpose of the spies is that they should search out the land for us. That's why the people asked. Amar Rabbi Chia bar Abba meragalim lo nitkavenu ela leboshta shel Eretz Yisrael. Kitiv acha v'yachpedu lanu et haaretz uchtiv hatam v'chafra halebana ubosha hachama. And so Rabbi Chia says their intention was never to search out the land for military purposes or to see how good it is, but rather they wanted to shame the land. As it says, another pasuk v'chafera. So it's saying v'yachperu is not about digging or searching or spying, but rather comes from the same root as to embarrass, as is used in Yeshaya. So he said, let's send out spies so that we can bring shame and speak badly about the land, which is, by the way, a halacha. One should not say lashon hara, not just about people, but also about the land of Israel. Ve'ele shemotam lemateru ben Shamua ben Zakur amar Rabbi Yitzchak dabar zeh masoret b'yadenu mavotenu miragelim al shem ma'asehem nikreu ve'anu lo alta b'yadenu ela echad. So it says these are the names of the spies, and so from the tribe of Reuben, Shamua ben Zakur, and so on. Rabbi Yitzchak says we have a tradition that the Meraglim, this is their names were actually their code names. It's about each of them as a reference to their actions. It's not their real names that their parents called them, but rather these are symbolic names. But even though we have a tradition that each of the names are figurative, we only remember a tradition about one of them, and that's about Setur ben Michael. Why is he called that? Setur is because Satar, he went against the actions of Hashem. He ignored the actions of Hashem, and in being a bad spy and saying we can't do this. And he's called Ben Michael, which sounds like a nice name, but actually is Shasatz Mo Mach. He made himself appear weak. When it says he made himself appear weak, you could take it literally. He said, oh, who are we? We're going to be like grasshoppers. But actually he's referring to God. We don't want to say it, that we made God appear weak, right? But that's what it means. He said, oh, God is God can't do it, right? There's no food in the land. God can't help us. He's not going to be able to conquer those giants inside. And so he went against the counsel of God and made God look weak. So that's the Setur b'Michael. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Af anu nomad nachbi ben vofsi. Rabbi Yochanan says, even though we forgot the tradition of all of the names, but we can figure out some of them. So nachbi shechbi devarav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Nachbi comes from the word to conceal. So that he concealed the words of God, and that he didn't deliver the correct message, even though it was a good idea to go into the land. He held that back and only talked about the bad. Vofsi shepisea amidotav shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Vofsi, to stamp, like pisea, on the attributes of God. He did not say that God is powerful and can do everything. Instead, he said, no, God can't do it. He's not going to help us. And so that's the hint of Vofsi. In fact, Rabbi Shammah points out in his commentary, recalling the covenant on these words, that you can take all these words as symbolic, and they all refer to something that would be good for a spy to do, and they're kind of positive. In other words, the point is Moshe picked good people that are talented to be spies. Like Shamua means he could hear very well. Zakur, he remembers everything. You want a spy that he can, seek out, hear everything, remember everything. Seter, he can keep a secret, right? And Nachbi, he can hide well. So actually, all of these you can go look there in the commentary, where you can see that almost all the names are in fact hints to qualities that you would want a spy to have. Even Caleb is like Caleb ben Yefuneh. Caleb, by his smell, always knows which way to go. Yefuneh, to turn right, to turn left. So these were positive things, and they were supposed to be good spies. Moshe picked talented people, but it was their egos, their lack of faith, that made 10 of them come back and give a negative report. But it's still interesting that the Gemara here says that there is a tradition that these are symbolic names, and that's true for many of the names in Tanakh. So it says regarding the spies that they went up into the south, and he came to Hebron. Well, what do you mean? It should have said in plural that they came to Hebron. Why only he came to Hebron? Amar Rava melamed sheperash Kaleb me'asat meragelim ve'alach ve'nishtatach al kibrei avot. Rava teaches that Caleb left all the rest of the meraglim, and he came and prayed at the grave of the avot in Hebron, at Ma'arat HaMachpelah. And what did he pray? Amar lehen avotai, bakishu alai rachamim she'en nasel me'asat meragelim. He said, my forefathers, please pray for me that I will be saved from the counsel of the rest of the spies. In other words, Caleb himself, he felt that Yetzer Hara of being afraid and not having faith like everybody else. But he knew that this was wrong, and so he needed spiritual strength, so he went to pray to the Avot. This is one example of someone praying at Kivrei Metim, Kivrei Sadikim, but notice he does not pray to the Avot, right? Because that would be prohibited, that would be idolatrous, Doresh Ela Metim, if one asks the Avot, he says, if you ask a deceased person or any other force to help you out besides Hashem, that would be idolatrous. So he's not doing that. Here he's saying, he's asking the forefathers to help intercede to Hashem on his behalf. So that's an important distinction between a proper and improper way of praying at a site of a grave. Okay, so Caleb, that's why it says it in the plural, in the singular, only he went to Hebron. Now, how about Yoshua? Yoshua kivar bikesh Moshe alav rachamim shema vekra Moshe leHoshea binun Yehoshua Yah. Yoshiacha me'asat meragelim. Hanu dichtiv ve'abdi Caleb ayekeb hayeta ruach acheret imo. Yoshua did not have to go to Hebron to pray for himself because Moshe already prayed for him. That's when Moshe changed his name from Hoshea to Yehoshua. So in that name is that Hashem will save him. Save him from what? Save him from the counsel of the other spies, from that peer pressure of the other spies. So Yoshua already had the strength to know the right thing to do, and that's also supported by another pasuk that says, my servant Caleb, he had a different spirit with him, different from Yehoshua. Yehoshua had the courage right from the outset because Moshe prayed for him. Caleb, however, was wavering, and he had the Yetzer Hara, and he could have almost gone with the counsel of the 10 spies, and that's why he had to go to Hebron to save himself and get spiritual energy so that he could do the right thing. V'sham Achiman Sheshai v'Talmai. Now the giants that were in the land, these are their names. Their names also have symbolic meaning. Achiman miyuman shebe'ehav. Achiman means that he was the most skilled or stood out among his brothers. He was the leader. Sheshai shemesim et haaretz kish chatot. Sheshai is because he would turn the land into ditches. Shechatot, because he had such large feet, Bigfoot, right? So every time he took a step, he would make a ditch in the ground. Talmai shemesim et haaretz telamim, telamim talmai. He would turn the land furrows and furrows. Because of his weight, as he walks, he makes a deep furrow into the land. Davar echad achiman bana anat. Sheshai bana alush, Talmai bana talbush. Or another expression of the names, Achiman, he built the city of Anat, Sheshai built the city of Alush, Talmai built the city of Talbush. That proves that these were very important people. Yelidei ha'anak shemanikin hama bimkom matan. Why are they called the children of Anak? They're very large, they're very tall, that it appears like Anak, manikim. They're wearing the sun as a necklace. They're so tall that they appear, I guess if you're short, taller than the sun, and the sun is below them like the sun is a necklace upon them. All right, and we end the daf with a praise of the land of Eretz Yisrael that is more beautiful and fruitful even than the land of Egypt. Hebron, Sheba Shanim Nibneta. Hebron, it says, was built 7 years before Soan of Egypt. The point is here, Hebron is a very old city, even before that old city of Soan that everybody knows in Egypt. My Nibneta. Now, what does this mean? Literally means it was actually built. It was established before Soan. But if we take it literally, אפשר אדם בונה בית לבנו קטן קודם לבנו גדול, דכתיב ובני חם, כוש ומצרים ופוט וכנען. Ham had 4 kids, and we see that Mitzrayim, his second child, is older than Canaan. Now Hebron is in Eretz Canaan, so it doesn't make sense that he would build a city, that Ham would build a city for his youngest son, Canaan, that's Hebron, before he built a city for his older son, Mitzrayim, where Soan is. So therefore, we cannot take it literally that Hebron was built first. Rather, we're taking the word as not mevuneh, not as built, but rather more fruitful, that 7 times more fruitful than Soan. Now, just to explain how fruitful and how wonderful Eretz Yisrael is compared to Mitzrayim, and lecha terashim b'chol Eretz Yisrael yater mi-Hebron. There's no more stony land in Eretz Yisrael than Hebron. In other words, Hebron is the worst land in the land of Israel, right? It's the most stony. You can't grow nice crops in Hebron. So Hebron is the worst of Eretz Yisrael, and that's the reason why mishum dekabre ba shichbe. You can tell because they used it as burial ground. You're not going to use the best agricultural land for burial ground. You'll use the worst agricultural land as your cemetery. Now regarding Egypt, the best of the land of Egypt is Soan. How do you know? First of all, Egypt is the best of all the lands. As a pasuk when it's referring to Sodom, it says Sodom is like, it's like Hashem's garden, like Gan Eden, and it's like Egypt. So Egypt is the best of all the lands of the world, except for Israel. And within Mitzrayim, the best part is Soan. The ministers of Paro lived in Soan, and surely they would live in the best land. And nevertheless, Hebron is 7 times more fruitful than Soan. In other words, the best province of the best country, Soan of Mitzrayim, which is the best of the best, is itself 7 times less fruitful than the most stony land in Israel, which is Hebron. So imagine how much better is the best land in Israel than that. V'Chebron terashim have, and now we ask, wait a second, is Hebron all stony? V'Ketiv, v'hi meches 40 shana, v'yom Rab Shalom el HaMelech el Chana v'gomer, v'amad Rav Aviyah, v'yitam Rabba bar Hanan, shalach lavi kevasim mechebron, v'tanya elim Moav kevasim mechebron. So wait, how could you say that Hebron is all full of stones? It says in Shemuel Bet that after 40 years, Absalom said to the king, I want to go, and I made a vow, I'm going to give a sacrifice, and he went to Hebron. And why did he go to Hebron? Well, he wanted to get the best sheep. So the rams that he got from Moav, they have the best, and the kevasim, Hebron has the best kevasim. If it has the best sheep, that means it has the best land that are eating from there. So that means that Hebron must be the best of the land of Israel, right? No, Mina actually can prove from this very pasuk the opposite. It's precisely because this land is thin and not so good, so the land in Hebron cannot be used for growing grain and other fruits and vegetables because it's a very thin soil on top of rocks. Since it wasn't used for any other agriculture, instead it grew grass, and that's why it was perfect for livestock that are perfectly happy with grass that only needs a thin layer of soil. So it's precisely because it was not used for anything else, because it was the stoniest, that's why it was perfect for grazing land, and that's why Avshalom went to Hebron to get the best livestock from there, and that proves that Hebron, which is the worst of the land is the most stony of the land of Israel, is itself 7 times greater than the best of Eretz Mitzrayim. Baruch Adonai Leolam, Amen ve'Amen.